I've heard this notion that we pulled out 4,000 out of the air, that this 4,000 came out of the blue, that this 4,000 number is made up by this council on a whim, and it's not. And can you just, for the record, just go back to when we start hearing the number 4,000 and what context? The reason why I'm asking is that the impression being made by those assertions is that this council is being rather whimsical and non-responsible and callous to what's happening to our employees, and that's far from the truth. If anything, we're trying to save jobs by avoiding the inevitable if we don't make decisive decisions. So can you please share for the record, when did we hear this 4,000 first, and in what context?
Well, certainly, over the last couple of years, there have been numerous verbal reports to council and discussing the budget gap and how to address it. But very specifically, in terms of written responses, in a CLACO report on December 17th of 2008, we jointly said we were looking at a projected $433 million budget gap for the following year.
So that was about a year ago.
It was a year and a half ago.
Year and a half.
Almost, and a direct quote, in terms of staffing levels, the elimination of over 4,000 filled civilian positions would be necessary to address the $433 million deficit.
And that $433 million has...
Well, correct. That was in December of 2008. In my report to the council on the Finance Committee, Budget and Finance Committee's budget for this year, we were looking at a $326 million deficit at that point. That was the shared sacrifice amount. And we indicated that it could be in excess of 3,000 filled positions that would have to be eliminated to address the civilian portion of the shared sacrifice. Now, obviously, since that time, the sworn portion of the shared sacrifice wasn't met. We've also had a drop in revenues of, about $150 million. So the total of 4,000 figure is in fact consistent with what has been out there for the last year and a half.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I just want to respond briefly to Mr. Reyes' points, many of which I agree with wholeheartedly. I think the need to address this year's budget deficit and next year's budget deficit right now, aggressively and forthrightly, is imperative, and I agree wholeheartedly that that is going to require reduction in the number of positions that we have funded. I believe that there's absolutely no way, with the magnitude of the budget that we're facing, that we're going to be able to escape that reality. But if there was a suggestion that a vote against the move from 1,000 to 4,000 layoffs last week is in some way disingenuous, I do feel the need to respond to that because that word was used twice. My concern was the fact that for at least a month now, we've been asking our staff to prepare for 1,000 layoffs. We've been asking them to meet the almost impossible task of creating lists, processing them, and then changing our minds and saying, but before you do any of that, let's be sure to move as many of them as we can into other positions. And then, without any real advance notice, we say, take all that back, now start working on 4,000 layoffs. Now, if it's true that this number has been talked about for a year and a half, then respectfully, I would suggest that perhaps steps should have been taken over the course of the last year and a half to address this problem, instead of in the first 24 hours after we get a letter from a bond rating agency. And if that were the case, then by all means, this council and the mayor could have gotten to work a lot earlier on trying to address those positions and create the efficiencies and to go after the revenue sources and the other things to try to minimize this impact. But my vote, I can't speak for others, my vote on that proposal was based on process, was based on the fact that this was reactionary, this was responsive, and wasn't proposed by the CAO, wasn't a proposal that came through the Budget Committee, but was a proposal that was done on the fly in the course of a single day's meeting of the council.
The decision that we made last week was not made on a zigzag, on the fly. We were in closed session, and while I'm not going to go into the details of what occurred in closed session, I'm certainly not going to stand here quietly and allow those words to have power, because they're incorrect. Now, you know, some people just got here. It's like a bus station. Some people may be leaving, some people are just arriving. Not everybody got here at the same time. Not everybody heard the same information. We've been talking about this for almost 2 years now. Mr. Santana is a new addition, and grateful for that. Mr. Miller and Ms. So have been fighting this battle and speaking the truth for quite a while, and not being listened to at every turn, and so, you know, it's no surprise that we're in the situation that we're in. But to say, and I don't want to go back and forth, Mr. Krekorian, I respect you. I know you're a very intelligent man, highly educated, and very experienced, but that was not a decision that was made on the fly. And I want to say this publicly so that people hear that this is my truth. I do not believe that decision was made on the fly. I believe that decision was based on good, sound advice from our administrative officers, our financial analysts inside the city, and my only hope is that we haven't acted too late, but at least we acted definitively.